We all grow up thinking love is loud, that when someone cares about us, they'll flood us with attention, constantly text us back, always want to be around. But what if love doesn't always look the way we expect? What if sometimes love is quiet, deliberate, even distant? This might sound confusing, even painful, but sometimes the people who truly care about you are the very ones who pull away, not because they don't love you, but because they do. In a world that confuses constant contact with connection, we need to understand the deeper language of love, the one that isn't always spoken. Because if someone really loves you, they won't always chase you. Sometimes they'll pause, they'll reflect, and yes, they might even ignore you, but not in the way you think. We live in a world that confuses volume with value. The louder someone is about their feelings, the more visible they are in your life, the more we tend to believe they care. We're conditioned to associate love with constant validation. Good morning texts, non-stop calls, over-the-top declarations. And yes, those things can feel wonderful, but they aren't always the most honest indicators of real love. Sometimes the truest form of love is quiet. It doesn't scream, it doesn't always explain itself, and it doesn't constantly show up in obvious ways. It's present in the spaces in between, in the moments when no one's watching, when nothing needs to be said. Love like this isn't trying to prove itself, it simply is. And because of that, it's often mistaken for indifference or distance. But if you look a little deeper, you'll notice that real love doesn't need to announce its presence every second. It just remains. There are people who will flood your phone, comment on every post, say all the right things, but when it comes down to showing up in real, meaningful ways, through patience, consistency, or sacrifice, they fall short. And then there are others who might not speak as often, might not be constantly in your face, but who never let you down when it matters. They show up for the hard conversations. They listen when you're not your best self. They respect your space, your individuality, your process. It's easy to fall for the person who gives you butterflies, who makes your phone light up all day. But the person who truly loves you won't always be the one who gives you the most noise. They might be the one who gives you the most peace. That kind of love doesn't need to be fed by constant interaction. It thrives in understanding, in knowing that connection isn't lost in silence, and that absence doesn't always mean disinterest. In fact, real love often has a quiet kind of strength to it. It's secure. It doesn't panic when a message goes unanswered for a few hours. It doesn't crumble under temporary silence. It doesn't demand your presence every minute of every day. Instead, it trusts. It gives space. It allows both people to breathe. It understands that two whole people coming together doesn't mean losing individuality. It means creating a bond strong enough to hold its shape even when it's stretched by life's demands. Sometimes people pull away not because they're losing interest, but because they care enough to reflect. They care enough to not rush their feelings. They don't want to offer you something half-formed. They want to come to you whole, clear, intentional. And that process might look like silence, it might look like distance, but it's not disconnection. It's a pause filled with purpose. Real love is thoughtful. It's not impulsive. It takes its time. And in that time, it's often misunderstood. People assume if someone isn't constantly showing up, they're losing interest. But some of the most powerful kinds of love are the ones that give you space. That kind of love says, I care about you enough to let you grow. I don't need to control you. I don't need to monitor you. I trust you and I trust what we're building. It's also important to realize that some people love you in ways you might not yet know how to recognize. Oily. They love you through small actions, through remembering the little details you shared in passing, through protecting your energy when you're overwhelmed, through stepping back when they sense you need space. And it's easy to overlook that kind of love when you're waiting for dramatic gestures. But those small, quiet moments often carry more weight than anything else. Love is not always loud. Sometimes it's the silence after an argument, when someone chooses not to say something hurtful, even though they could. Sometimes it's the decision to let you take the lead when you're uncertain, instead of always jumping in. Sometimes it's the check-in, when you're going through something tough, not for conversation, not for drama, just to say, I'm here. And sometimes it's even the act of stepping away, not out of apathy, but out of deep care for your growth or clarity. Many people mistake quiet love for weak love, but what they don't see is that it takes incredible strength to love without needing constant reassurance, without needing to be seen or praised. It takes emotional maturity to love someone without making them responsible for your ego. And that kind of love, that's the kind that lasts. That's the kind that endures changes, distance, hard conversations, and personal growth. If you've ever felt confused because someone who loves you isn't always present in the way you expected, take a moment to ask yourself, are they absent? Or are they simply not loud? Are they neglecting you, or are they holding space for you? Are they pulling away, or are they giving you room to breathe? Sometimes love doesn't feel like a firework. It feels like a quiet sunrise. It doesn't shock you, it steadies you. It doesn't always race ahead. It walks beside you. It's the kind of love that doesn't just want to be with you in the fun, easy moments, but wants to hold your hand through the silent, uncertain ones too. So if you're waiting for love to be loud, to believe it's real, you might miss the kind of love that's quietly showing up in ways that truly matter. Look deeper. Watch how someone behaves when no one's watching. Pay attention to how they respond to your silence, your struggles, your growth. That's where love reveals itself, not always in noise, but in presence. And presence doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. We live in a time where communication is instant. You can text someone in seconds, send heart emojis, voice notes, memes, pictures, but let me ask you something real. Does that mean they love you? Does a heart emoji mean they're emotionally available? Does a good morning text mean they're willing to stand beside you when life gets hard? We've been taught to measure someone's love through constant interaction. But love is not in the frequency of messages, it's in the consistency of behavior. A person can text you all day and still not truly care. They can call you every night and still not be emotionally invested in building anything real with you, because love isn't about attention, it's about intention. Someone who loves you doesn't just message you, they mean something by the way they show up. And showing up doesn't always look like a text at 9 a.m. on the dot. It looks like how they respond when you're hurting, how they react when you set boundaries, how they behave when it's no longer convenient to be charming. There are people who are experts at communication, but avoid all emotional responsibility. They know exactly what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. But when you need more than words, they vanish. They're quick with the compliments but slow with accountability. They'll send you "I miss you" texts at midnight but won't show up for you in the daylight when real connection requires effort. That's why emotional investment can't be measured in how often someone reaches out. It's measured in how deeply they engage when it matters most. Are they present for the uncomfortable moments? Do they listen, or do they just wait for their turn to talk? Do they make time when it's inconvenient, or only when it suits them? Do they follow through with what they say, or is everything just noise? You have to stop being impressed by breadcrumbs. Attention is easy, presence is hard. Anyone can message you when they're bored, but someone who's emotionally invested will make space for you when they're busy. They'll remember what matters to you, not because you reminded them 3 times, but because they were actually paying attention. Emotional investment isn't shown in the rush of dopamine after a text alert. It's felt in the calm of knowing someone's actions align with their words. People fall into this trap all the time. They confuse availability with commitment. They text me every day. So what? That doesn't mean they're planning a future with you. That doesn't mean they're emotionally open, willing to be vulnerable, or ready to grow with you. It just means they're staying connected enough to keep you interested. But staying connected isn't the same as being committed. Real investment is about emotional consistency. When someone is truly in it with you, they don't just pop in and out of your life depending on their mood. They don't get close when they're lonely and distant when they've had their fix. Instead, they're steady. You don't have to chase clarity because their behavior provides it. Think about it this way. If you're constantly analyzing someone's texts, trying to figure out what they mean, or if their silence today contradicts their words yesterday, that's not emotional investment. That's emotional confusion. And love should not be a puzzle. It might be challenging at times, sure, but you shouldn't have to decode someone's feelings every day. When someone truly cares, they make you feel safe, not anxious. There's a big difference between someone who enjoys your company and someone who values your presence. One might blow up your phone when they're bored. The other will protect your time, respect your energy, and show up with purpose. They won't just react to you, they'll respond with care. They won't just entertain you, they'll build with you. And here's the truth most people avoid. Love is action. Love is not in how someone performs. It's in how they behave when it's difficult, when it's vulnerable, when it's real. Love is how they treat you when there's no spotlight, no reward, no immediate gratification. That's where their investment shows. So don't get distracted by the person who says all the right things. Watch what they do. Do they ask about your dreams and actually listen to your answers? Do they support your boundaries or guilt trip you for having them? Do they encourage your independence, or do they make you feel safe enough to be your full self? Because emotional investment is not measured in performance. It's measured in presence. And presence isn't loud. It's consistent, it's stable, it's grounded. If someone cares, it shows in the decisions they make when you're not around. It shows in whether they're building something real or just keeping the conversation going to maintain access. Well, if someone is truly invested, they don't just talk about feelings, they show you through emotional reliability, honesty, and respect. So let go of the illusion that love needs to be loud, constant, or digital. Pay attention to who aligns their energy with your needs, not just with their words, but with their time, their effort, and their consistency. Because in the end, love doesn't look like a string of messages. It looks like Life where their actions answer the question their words once asked. It's not how often they say they care. It's how you feel when they're around. And if you ever have to wonder whether they're emotionally invested, take a step back. Observe. Because true love never leaves you guessing. One of the hardest things to accept in love is that sometimes space is necessary. And it doesn't always mean something is wrong. In fact, healthy relationships often include moments that feel like distance. Not because the love is fading, but because both people are growing. We tend to associate closeness with security. We think, if they love me, they'll want to be with me all the time. They'll need me. They'll miss me every second. But that expectation can turn love into suffocation. Real love isn't about always being near each other. It's about feeling safe, even when you're apart. When someone takes space, it can trigger your deepest insecurities. You might wonder if they're pulling away, losing interest, or even preparing to leave. But sometimes taking space is a sign of emotional maturity, not detachment. It means they care enough to maintain their identity, to regroup, to process, to reflect, so they can show up better for you. The truth is, people need space to breathe, to stay emotionally clear, to connect to themselves, because you can't give what you don't have. And if someone is always wrapped up in the relationship, they can begin to lose sight of who they are outside of it. That loss of self doesn't just hurt them, it eventually weakens the relationship too. Healthy love says, I trust that we don't have to be in constant contact to feel connected. It says, I respect your need for solitude, growth, or focus. It doesn't panic when someone steps back. It understands that a strong bond can handle temporary space. Of course, space can be misused. Some people hide behind it to avoid commitment, conflict, or vulnerability, but that's not healthy space. That's avoidance. The difference is clear when you pay attention. When someone is taking space with intention, they're honest about it. They communicate it, not disappear. They say, I need a moment, not I'm done. And on your end, it's important not to chase when someone you love takes a step back. Your job isn't to fix, to cling, or to convince them to come closer. It's to hold steady. To trust that if the connection is real, it doesn't need to be constantly maintained. It needs to be respected. Sometimes two people can love each other deeply and still need time apart to become the best version of themselves. That space might feel like emotional distance. It might trigger anxiety, even loneliness. But often, it's the very thing that strengthens the foundation of a relationship. Because in that time, you each rediscover who you are. You bring that growth back to the partnership, creating a deeper, richer bond. Think of space as the soil between two strong trees. If the roots are too tangled, they can choke each other. But with just enough space, both trees grow taller, stronger, reaching new heights side by side. Love is the same. It needs room to grow. That doesn't mean pulling away for weeks on end without explanation. It doesn't mean stonewalling, ghosting, or emotional neglect. It means being secure enough to say, right now, I need time to reflect and I still care about you. Or being able to hear someone say that without interpreting it as rejection. The most powerful relationships are built on trust, not constant proximity. And sometimes what feels like distance is actually a gesture of respect, a commitment to self-awareness, to healing, to clarity. It's someone saying, I don't want to bring my confusion or stress into this space. I want to come to you with my full heart. So when you feel that space, pause before assuming the worst. Ask yourself, is this distance or is this growth? Are they running from me or are they making room for us? to breathe. Sometimes the very act of stepping back is what allows love to step forward more powerfully than before. If the bond is real, space doesn't weaken it, it reveals its strength. Love doesn't need constant closeness, it needs trust. And trust says, even when you're not right here, I believe in what we have. When we care about someone, our instinct is often to chase. We want clarity. We want reassurance. We want to feel close to them again. So when someone pulls away, even slightly, we start searching for answers. Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Should I try harder? But in those moments, the most powerful thing you can do is not chase. It's to observe. When someone takes a step back, they're giving you information. They're telling you, intentionally or not, how they respond under pressure, how they handle connection, and whether they are capable of showing up in a healthy, mature way. But you only get that insight if you pause long enough to see it. When you chase, you interrupt that process. You start filling in the blanks with your effort instead of letting their behavior reveal the truth. The reason we chase is because uncertainty feels unbearable. The silence, the unanswered messages, the slow replies, it all creates a gap. And our minds rush to fill that gap with meaning. Often, the meaning we choose comes from our wounds, not from reality. I'm not good enough. They're abandoning me. I must fix this. But love isn't fixed by chasing. It's clarified by stepping back and watching. When you chase someone who is emotionally unavailable or inconsistent, you end up negotiating for a connection that should be freely given. You start auditioning for love instead of receiving it. And the more you try to convince them to stay, the more power you hand over. You make their validation your oxygen. And suddenly, you're no longer standing in your worth. You're surviving on their crumbs. But what if, instead of running after them, you paused? What if, instead of sending another message, making another call, or justifying their distance, you said to yourself, I'm going to observe now. I'm going to let their actions speak louder than their excuses. Because someone's next move always reveals their true intentions. If their silence is followed by effort, explanation, or real presence, you know they care. If their silence is followed by more silence, avoidance, or indifference, you also know the truth. But this time, it's the kind that frees you. Chasing feels active. It gives us the illusion of control, but observing is where real power lives. When you observe, you create space. You let the other person reveal their emotional capacity, their respect for you, and their interest, not through what they say, but through what they do. Love should not be one-sided labor. You should not be the only one driving the connection forward. If you stop trying and the relationship stops too, that's all the clarity you need. Love that's real doesn't require a rescue mission. It requires mutual effort. And here's the most empowering truth. The right person won't make you feel like you have to chase them. They won't leave you guessing. They won't weaponize distance or use silence to manipulate. They'll be clear. They'll meet you where you are. They'll show you, not just with words, but with consistent behavior, that they want to be in this with you. But you won't see that if you're constantly filling the space they leave behind. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is not saying anything, not asking for attention, not begging for clarity, just observing, letting them show you who they are when you stop doing the work for them. Observing also helps you shift your focus back to yourself. Instead of spending all your energy decoding someone else, you start listening to your own emotional reality. How do I feel right now? What do I need in this relationship? Am I being respected or just strung along? These are the questions that matter, because love isn't just about whether they choose you. It's also about whether you are choosing someone who honors you. You don't need to force what's right. And you can't fix what's wrong by chasing it harder. If someone cares, their actions will move toward you, even when things get tough. If they don't, their distance will grow. But either way, you'll see it clearly if you let yourself stop long enough to observe. It's not weakness to be still, it's strength. It takes courage to sit with uncertainty. It takes maturity to watch instead of react. It takes deep self-worth to say, I'm enough whether they come back or not. And when you start observing instead of chasing, something beautiful happens. You stop settling. You stop tolerating inconsistency. You start attracting people who meet your energy, your effort, and your depth, because you're no longer willing to beg for the basics. You're no longer giving out your love as a reward for bad behavior. So next time someone pulls away, take a breath. Resist the urge to fix. Step into your power. Say nothing. Do nothing. Just watch. Because how they respond in your stillness will tell you everything their words never could. Real love doesn't require you to chase it. It meets you where you are. And if it doesn't, that's not your person.